What's up, North County? I'm your host, Randy Doty, and today we are talking about the Paso Water Basin with Greg Graywall and Debbie Arnold. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah.
Thank you very
Thanks
much.
for having
Yeah,
us.
for sure. But before we get started, Debbie, I want to talk to you. Just retired, 5th District Supervisor, right?
Right. That's right.
Is that crazy? I mean, you're retired. You don't have anything to do now.
Yeah. No, it is nice being retired, and I tell people I just turned 70, and at some point you just have to think, you know what? All that bucket list that you had all your life, if you're going to do those things, you better get on it, right? When you get those 70th birthday hits you. But yeah, I finished after 12 years of serving the county. I was so honored to be able to serve this county for that long on the Board of Supervisors. And prior to that, when I was thinking about the whole thing, I was really involved in quasi-local politics for 25 years. I served as a legislative assistant to Mike Ryan, Creston, local here, when he was a county supervisor, and that was from 2000, the year 2000 to 2005, and then had the opportunity to work as a field representative for Sam Blakesley when he was in the Assembly and then the Senate, and then ran on my own and served the 12 years on the Board of Supervisors. So altogether, it was a wonderful run, but I was ready to go home and retire and pick up that bucket list that just kept getting bigger. A lot of procrastination, but we live out in the Pozo farm, run cattle there, lots to do. And
Now, you born and raised here?
No,
No?
I wasn't. No, I came to Cal Poly, and a lot of people remember me from the high school days, but I would come down here. I had an aunt and uncle living and managing a ranch out there in Pozo, and I would stay with them in the summertime. But I would go back to San Jose, the Bay Area. My dad was an air traffic controller, and that's where I graduated high school, and then came to Cal Poly right out of high school.
So, I mean, so you've been here for
Yeah, and been around since I was a
longer
kid.
than you've
In the
been
summer,
somewhere else.
The fairs and all the summertime activities. Yeah, I was a kid.
So you've seen this county grow like crazy. I mean, because obviously you've been involved in the growth as well.
Right.
But you've seen a pretty drastic change from, the 80s, 70s, and 80s to now.
Oh my gosh, I married Steve Arnold into the Arnold family in 1975 and moved to Pozo. And back then there were 8 party lines, meaning 8 houses shared one telephone. And on the Arnold Ranch, there was a telephone at his grandparents' house. So if I needed to ever use a phone, I could go to his grandparents' house and then wait for my turn from the 8 other families in the valley that were sharing that telephone line. That was 1975.
No
How
kidding.
things have changed.
Was
right?
that the whole, like, literally you have the operator on the other side connecting you through?
It was like, you had your rotary dial phones.
Okay.
When you picked it up, anybody of those 8 parties.
Oh,
that
you're
you
like, hey,
shared-
I'm sorry, okay.
Yeah. So everyone knew everybody's business for sure because everyone could listen.
Oh my
But it
gosh.
wasn't like in the older movies where you had the operator you had to go through. It wasn't that. You just picked up the phone, and if people were talking, you could listen. If someone else
Oh
was
my
connected
gosh.
in a call.
Don't breathe.
But it was really hard to be able to use the phone. But that's the one thing on my bucket list is writing some of the things down because I feel like I lived the end of an era in like the Pozo area, Creesa Plain, Shandon, all the North County. 8 party lines, and we when we were first married, we lived there on the Pozo Ranch. But Steve took a job on La Panza. Before it was subdivided, it was 30,000 acres. So this would have been 1978, and 30,000 acres. And the folks that had purchased the ranch were running stalker steers. So temporary few months to come in, and that's what he was doing, taking care of the cattle. I tell my kids who are in their 40s now, people my age, 70, we've heard all our life that our grandparents, the era of transportation, often went from a horse and buggy or horseback, especially if you were rural, to seeing a man land in the moon. And I tell my 40-year-old kids, you guys were the era of communication, because when we moved out from Pozo to La Panza, there was no phone at all. There wasn't even, you couldn't go to the grandparents to use the phone. There just wasn't one. Not very good radio or TV reception. It was just really out there, not a lot of communication. And we started our family. So I was housebound in those days. I had a baby at home, and we were raising young horses for part of our living. And so Steve would ride off on something, who knows what. And I would hope, he'd get home safe and sound. But I told the kids, we didn't have a phone, we didn't have anything. And your dad would go off. He would come home sometimes and tell me, turn on the radio. There must be something important in the news, because that radar ball on Black Mountain was of significance to the military. It was a communication radar tower, and if anything was happening around the world, they would fly a military plane around that. And he could be horseback in the middle of nowhere and look up and see that going on and come home and know to turn on the news and see what's up. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
But the reason I tell the kids, their age group, the era of communication, we went from nothing, no communication, very little, to being able to call anywhere in the world from your pocket, a cell phone in your pocket.
It's funny. We just had Kara Cry on from Farm Supply, and we were talking about the exact same thing. The communication time frame that we've lived in, from technology to communication to pretty much anything, you have dial-up.
Yeah.
Back, 30 years ago, you had a car phone, and then they went to the portable with a bag phone, but you still had to carry around this big bag with a battery pack, and
I still have mine.
Exactly. And now we're conducting video calls right from your cell phone. I mean, your cell phone is your computer.
Yeah.
And it's this it's just
Amazing.
It's like, what's next?
Yes.
Really, that's the question. What is next? We had Vicki Jensen on last month with the Cattle Women's Association, and evidently they're running chips in cattle down at Cal Poly to, get a map of where their habits are to go around on the ranch.
Yeah.
Up in the hills, to where they might never ever go to a certain area that they can
Purpose,
something.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no kidding. And then they could actually use these chips to actually have these invisible borders to where they can't go past this imaginary fence with these chips. And
It's
I'm like,
amazing.
wow.
When you're talking about those chips, it's funny because politics, right? When I ran for office 4 times, and during those campaign years, I would walk door to door. My district included, even within the city limits of Atascadero, there are a lot of large parcels with steep driveways and that sort of
Yeah,
thing. And
especially get up in the hills.
Yeah, there were a few times I'd be walking, and then all of a sudden this dog would come barking and bared teeth at me, and I'd think, uh-oh, this is the end of me. And then they'd stop right in front of me, and it was those collars that invisible,
the collars.
Fences.
Yeah.
That hold animals in and they work. I mean, I can tell you they work, because there were a few times I thought, this isn't good, and the dog would stop.
Well, and now your son, right? He's kind
yeah.
of stepped into that.
He ran for school board last election.
Wow.
People say, "Oh, you talked your son into." No. That wasn't me. I wouldn't have ever talked to my kids, because it is a lot of work. And anyway, as a mom, then you don't. Politics, people come together with different opinions, and sometimes people aren't so happy with you, right? And I didn't ever imagine my kids, but my son, he has 2 girls in the Atascadero Unified School District. He was very interested in the policies, the school district, and decided to run for office. So, yeah, he's on the school board.
Now, David, let me ask you a question, because since we're on politics and going to move into the JPA and the water basin and all that stuff, has politics always been this dividing amongst citizens and groups and parties? Has it always been? I mean, it just seems like in the last, 15 years, it's just like this. There's no okay, we can accept some policy on this side, we can accept some policy on this side. It's like cut, that's it.
I have to think that it always had, and at times was, this divisive. The reason I say that, the water's been really interesting to me, the evolution of the water policy county. And now that I'm retired and I don't have to read so much in the way of agendas and projects and all that, I chose to reread a book that I'd read 10 years ago maybe. And it's a really good book for your listeners if they are interested in history, but it's the story of the water, that basically California's water supply going from the north to the south, the Owens Valley providing the water for Los Angeles. At the time that was very, very, very contentious. And this is all going on between 1900 and 1910. And Los Angeles wouldn't have been able to evolve had it not been for kind of sneaking over there and grabbing somebody else's water. Owens Valley wasn't happy with that. And the story, one of the stories is Cadillac Desert, one of the books that's been written about the history of that. Cadillac Desert by Mark Reisner. And I'm rereading it and just kind of chuckling because, oh no, that was so, the politics of that was so crazy that it really was unbelievable. They were blowing up the water lines as they were building them, and people from Los Angeles were coming up and doing backroom sneaky deals to be able to steal the water in the first place and so forth. So it's a really interesting story, and for people that are interested in, that
What's
kind of thing,
happening
how does one community lose their natural resource like water to another, and how do you stop it? But I mean, it's interesting to read, and that is over 100 years ago.
And here we are now.
And then another example later, that the Civil War, I mean, back then, it didn't get any worse than that when that was all politics and policy, and it created a civil war in a country that almost divided it.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we live in a weird time, this just with everything. I mean, it could be apples and oranges. It could be, I mean, it's just, there's so many crazies and just, I live on common sense, what's common sense to me is, probably pretty close to the middle.
And that's the right way to live, because very often policy or messages are marketed to people. And you all know probably in this business that there are companies and consulting firms and marketing firms that make a living just deciding what people want to hear and then manipulating things around that. So, and it's a big business. So people just have to be careful. Use your common sense. Don't question it. You're just because you're reading
if it feels wrong, it probably is.
Yeah, and the right? problem is now, like you said, with communication, we're bombarded with so many things. That's what I think is more of a modern difference. We're bombarded with so many things. People didn't used to think they needed to know about every single thing that affected their life, and they didn't know. But today we have a lot thrown at us. Some of it's truthful, some of it is not. A lot of it's manipulative, and we just have to pick our way.
Probably which causes a lot of the divide.
Yeah.
Because 20 years ago, you didn't have Facebook, you didn't have anything like that, so you really got your news from you watch 5 o'clock news,
right?
Got your newspaper, and then that was it.
That's right.
Probably the social media has made and amplified that division and those narratives, or like you said, fake news. I mean, there's fake stuff out there.
And we realize that I think we've come to realize that you can't just believe everything you hear, and you need to do a little bit of your own. If that's a topic that interests you or matters to you, you have to do your own homework. And there are so many other outlets like this that you can listen and gain another perspective or learn more about the topic and create your own perspective. But it's different, the era of communication for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your service, your time spent with the county supervisors.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations on your retirement. So
Thank you.
Now you can choose to do whatever or whenever you want now.
Yeah.
Right?
She has to build fence with Steve.
Yeah.
She got a new job.
Awesome. So now we move on to the water basin. I mean, we talk about politics. You're talking about a water 100 years ago. Now we're here with water 100 years later in a technology-driven time. So Greg, so you were on last month, you and John. So what has transpired since then? I know the JPA, they just had newly elected members, right? Had their first meeting this past Monday. So what's been happening? San Miguel,
Yeah. So
bounced out.
yeah. So these five member groups. So obviously, if everybody remembers, we have Paso Robles wanted to be a groundwater agency. San Miguel is a groundwater agency, and they're actually water districts. They actually deliver water. Then you have the Shandon San Juan, who doesn't deliver water but wants to be a water district, or claims that they're legally a California water district, the same as EPC, Estrella, El Pomar, Creston Water District, which people have to realize there's, to petition to be a water district in a certain type of water district, there are rules. Well, they violated those rules, and they're in violation of the water code, but it doesn't seem to have caught in with the people that can do something about it yet on how their formation actually took place. But there are also two of the other agencies, and then you have the county. When Debbie was there protecting her constituents with John Pashong, the 1st and the 5th district overlie the basin, not Bruce Gibson in the 2nd district. And so he had votes from the other two supervisors to take charge. Now, we just heard a lot of different things. Nobody over the basin that's impacted by anything that's going on has any representation at the county, because they never voted for who's pursuing whatever they're trying to pursue. He hasn't had a groundwater sustainability meeting at the county since he took over, for the last 2 years at least. And so he does what he wants, he provides what he wants. Those other two fake districts funded his last campaign between $50,000 and $60,000. And then as soon as he got in, he made one of them the chairperson. So that person now, Matt Turrentine, is still they decided, the 4 agencies decided they'd pick their own positions on how they were going to run this joint powers agreement. So San Miguel's deal was pretty simple and straightforward. We don't know what it's going to cost. We know what we have. We know what we're doing. We're 3% of paying for anything. So we get 3 votes out of the 100 votes. We're basically 3,000 acres out of 436,000 acres. So we're just like a little dot over here. We have our little CSD boundary area, and we have 900 water meters, and we have a few people in our CSD that are on private wells, and their little part of the pie isn't really that big of a deal. So why would they get in and want to pay 20% of something that doesn't necessarily affect them the same way as the other agencies? So this agreement that they originally started out with, the Memorandum of Agreement, MOA, said this is to develop the plan. Once the plan is developed, this can go away, and then we can, and they decided to make an amendment and say, hey, we want this thing to carry on so that we can implement what the state approved in the plan. Okay. Well, now why the big change? Well, the big change from the MOA to this Joint Powers Agreement, which is a JPA, is the JPA allows you to take on debt and tax people. The MOA didn't do that. Each of those agencies had to pay for their prospective problems in their areas. Bruce Gibson gave away half of the voting power of the county, which is the largest portion, because those guys said, well, if you let us in, we'll pay for our part of the problem. Well, after they got done spending all the grant money and there wasn't any money left, so they've spent millions of dollars on duplicate studies and other kinds of things, conceptual projects that will never take place, at least I don't think in my lifetime. There's 10 to 36 hookups from Paso for this blended water thing, and this is on paper. This is not, it hasn't been built yet.
Right.
To build it, they need close to $100 million for 10 to 36 people to irrigate.
Jeez.
10 to 36 people are not going to spend $100 million. And that was without the water, without the cost of the water. So as they get into this, because I brought this up over a year ago, because Atascadero was having a problem with a couple of their wells having some contamination with what's called PFAS, forever chemicals, which are in all kinds of man-made stuff. So it comes through your wastewater. And
through like the leach lines and
well, no, through the treatment plants. So in a city's perspective, you know, if you have a wastewater system, you're pumping water, clean water to the homes, runs through the homes, goes to the wastewater facility, they treat it. They didn't used to treat for this because they didn't really know what it was. And they've changed from parts per billions to parts per trillions. So now they're having to do this. So this is the problem with Paso Robles. For Paso Robles, all the people that use water in Paso Robles, it's pumped from somewhere, whether it's pumped from the Paso Basin, the Atascadero Basin, Nacimiento, or the Salinas River. They get that water, it runs through their houses, it goes into the treatment, it goes to the sewer facility, gets treated, but they dump it in the river and it goes to the ocean or to Monterey. So they've never recharged any of the water they've taken from the ground here, where the rural landowners pump the water from their private well, goes through their home, goes out into their septic system, which is an underground recharge facility, and it recharges what they took. That is the difference. So now at this meeting the other day, they're figuring out from all the heat they're taking from the rural landowners with different radio commercials and shows like this that are actually educating people on what's going on, that they had to hire a consultant and a marketing firm to go, hey, what are we going to do? Well, first thing you need to do is get rid of the de minimis users, because they're going to squash your whole deal. So then they say, okay, well, we won't have a extraction fee. We're going to change it to a consumption fee. And so I think they're going to charge other people bigger agricultural things per acre. So if you're going to pay a fee per acre, it's not really on what you're pumping. You're just going to have a flat kind of thing, and they're going to get rid of the de minimis guys. So somebody at the meeting brought up, well, there's 5,000 voters out there, and 1,000 are these ag guys, and 5,000 are de minimis, or 4,000 are de minimis users. If they don't get the funding vote to pass, the joint powers agreement goes away. They have to have the funding, and all of it, you can just follow the money. Even in the story Debbie was talking about Cadillac Desert. Why did they come to this basin? Because we have 31 to 36 million acre feet of water underneath us. That doesn't mean everybody has a good well or this or that. The water is there, and the water is better in certain areas than it is in other areas because of the watershed that feeds that particular area and the amount of homes or agriculture or whatever that's over it. So the problem is manufactured, because nobody's going to be able to take over something if you don't have a problem. We were a medium priority basin until 2014. So what happened in 2014? The county, Bruce Gibson and some others, decided they were going to sue the constituents over the basin that were trying to protect their property rights, which included water. And all that came from an emergency ordinance that they did in August of 2013, that you couldn't use your land, but they didn't compensate you by reducing your taxes. You couldn't irrigate on your land. They couldn't tell you what water you could use. They can't do that. So they told you what you could plant, because they have land use authority, and that authority gave them what they felt the right to say, okay, you can't put any, we're going to tell you what you can plant. Because they couldn't tell you you can't use water, because the state constitution says if you live over the land, you have the priority right to the beneficial use of the water beneath you on your land. Not to sell it, not to transfer it. You're not there to monetize it. Well, these guys with this joint powers thing have been here since 2005. The same groups trying to manipulate and manage the water.
But Greg, let me ask you a question. What's I mean, in your mind, what's their their end result? What's the purpose?
Money.
But
Follow-
from who? From the
from-
people that live here?
No, from making water the commodity that's worth a lot. So that's why, what's your land worth without water? Well, if they're in charge of it, so if first they tried to form a special district, and Debbie was involved in that and getting the vote changed from, they wanted it to vote one vote per acre, so that 24 people that own the most acreage could be in charge of this district.
So Debbie, you were in charge. So tell me about that. Tell me about your take on that.
Part of the motivation, the reason I ran at all for supervisor, was I thought it was very important for the North County to, especially in other parts of the county, to have someone on the Board of Supervisors that would represent the rural issues and the needs of the rural folks, because half of our population was living outside of a city limit on well water, et cetera, and fire danger and all the things that come along with living in the rural areas. So I run for office representing agriculture, I thought, and this issue pops up. So it really was a wake-up call to me. There's all different kinds of agriculture. There's production agriculture, and then what I'm calling kind of an investment in water, where agriculture becomes a cover crop, right? So when you see big investments coming in, like the Harvard Trust money coming in and purchasing thousands of acres and planting it with planting it to irrigate, and presumably, I'm not them, but presumably just trying to secure water rights and then manipulate the control of the water. I saw that as a problem, and I knew just enough to think, this isn't quite right. What they're saying isn't quite right. We were in a drought, and I mean, we've all in this area, we know historically we've lived through droughts. As a matter of fact, I'm a history buff, and I like to go all the way back. I'm always amazed at our founding fathers and the things they said in their quotes and their writings, how they can still be relevant today. And it was James Madison that has a quote on the books that crisis is the rallying cry of the tyrant. Well, that's what we were hearing in those beginning years. The water situation's a crisis. This is a crisis, crisis, crisis. And it makes people react quickly and maybe not so smartly. But I kept thinking to myself, well, it's a drought. We've had them before. And you can go back on the record and see we've had severe droughts that worse than we even went through in the last. But I believe that some of the folks that were here in the county were trying to take advantage of that situation and encourage people to give up, a lot of their constitutional rights or their property rights in order to, be governed by some entity. I spent a lot of years then trying to protect the property owners here in our county, my constituents, because I truly believe that was my job, to do what was best for them, not what was best for these outside investors, not what, and I'm not saying I have all the answers or I know everything about it, but history shows that very often communities are overwhelmed and then taken advantage of, and they lose these natural resources and change their community forevermore. I didn't want that to happen here, and I did see manipulation, and I did spend time in Sacramento. I had just finished working for Sam Blakesley, so I still kind of knew my way around the legislative process up there. What we saw was just wasn't right for the people that live here. For a small group to come in, purchase a lot of property, whether it was suitable for irrigation or not, it was being irrigated out of this large basin, and then try to create a system. They drew a line. The first hint that we should know this wasn't right. They drew a line around the entire basin, the Bulletin 118 basin. The basin is something that's identified by the water departments in Sacramento, right? It didn't have anything to do with local land use, really, and And then everyone inside, which was everyone in the North County practically, or on the east side of the 101, was going to be part of this water district. They were these folks that came in and tried to promote that first water district. I just think they were playing us, and these are the reasons. They got our beloved Cacho to sponsor a bill, and I used to talk to Cacho almost every week. Cacho, this bill that you're carrying is not going to be good for the people that live here. It's okay, Debbie, it's okay. He was up in Sacramento listening, with other people in his ears, but they were using a process. That's what we all have to be careful for. That we get trapped in a governmental process that created water districts. California has 600 of them, I think, water districts throughout the state. Water districts were designed for people to be able to pool their money and share in the cost of infrastructure. So say we all, the valley's full of water districts. We all live in near each other, and you have 200 acres and I have 500 acres. Greg has 1,000 acres. We're going to create a water district and pay for water pipes to carry state project water, melted snow, into our area so that we can irrigate our farms, right? We shouldn't all be paying the same. It's not even. If we're all going to pay the same amount of money, you're only getting the benefit on your 200 acres, me on my 5, him on his 1,000. So the process was created to vote by the acre on these things and these water districts, California irrigation districts. And I would agree with that, right? Because somebody's going to get more and pay more for it. But to bring that process into here, draw a circle around everybody, the 1 acre person over on Jardine that isn't irrigating anything. In fact, most of the people not irrigating. And you'd all be sucked into this governance where into a water district that has the authority to tax and regulate you.
So whether you have 1 acre or 1,000 acres, it's all the same.
Well, you were going to be sucked into this governance. And I was saying, no, we don't want to be governed by, who are you? Who are you people? And we don't want to create more government. And who's going to benefit this handful of people? No. Okay, the answer is no. But it was really hard because when they were voting by the acre, meaning, and they'd invested in so many acres, they had a lot of votes, right? 50, 60,000 votes on these big investments in the eastern part of the county. And some people, if you had 5 acres, you got 5. So you could see that wasn't going to be a fair and balanced thing at all. And so that was my first warning. Okay, we're getting played on this deal, and we're going to be sorry. It was, I think, a political miracle, kind of. I'm not even taking credit for thinking it up because I couldn't have. I didn't know enough about this to think this up. But I had colleagues that I had worked with that were helping me. I asked for help. I said, could you guys, I got a little team of my colleagues together, said, I got this problem, and I don't know what to do. And it was my old boss in Sam's office that said, okay, this is a really big, long shot, but I don't know, I can't think of anything else. You go up to Sacramento and that bill's passing through that's going to create this water district, and you try to get that process changed, an amendment. Don't oppose the bill. Try to amend the bill so that everyone gets to vote equally, and it's not 1 acre, 1 vote. That means the 5,000 individual landowners, big and small, all get a voice in whether we're going to give our whole entire half a million acre basin area up to these few to govern with the most acres. Well, of course, you know the answer and how that turned out. That was AB 2453. And when people understood that, do you want to be governed by a few people? Because this is a process. We've never had a irrigated water district. People didn't understand, but this is a process. It's not a democratic republic process. A few people with the most acres will decide all the rules and all the taxation and all the things that are going to be built with taxpayer dollars. They will be the decision makers. And people said, no, that doesn't sound right. AB 2453 went down in flames. Almost 80% of the landowners, once they had a fair vote, said, we don't want that. Well, that was 10 years ago. And I feel like this is just another attempt, different
resurrection
day.
of the path.
And it shows me the fact that it was just a goofy scheme again, right? These couple, when AB 2453 went down, those large landowners that I'm calling investors really came in and they regrouped, and they did create their own water districts, as they can and should. I mean, if you want to be a water district, be one. Just don't force everybody into this. So they created their San Juan Water District, very large land parcel or land operations.
62 guys.
And then they later went after, that was the low-hanging fruit, because they owned all the property, right? Then they created another water district, the El Palmar, which is, and Greg, this is the other oddball thing. A lot of these things are one-off of being really following the law. In other words, with the El Palmar, it's not contiguous properties. They've taken a process for creating water districts that was developed for one thing and kind of adjusted it to fit, you know. But basically what you're doing when you create a water district is creating a government. A joint powers authority is even a bigger step than that. Number one, it would be very hard to unwind. Number two, a joint powers authority, it's almost like a one-off. I think people like in our country, and we're used to this, you have a government where you're going to vote for somebody. If I was going to vote for you and you did something I really didn't like, I wouldn't want to vote for you. For the next time I'd try to, and that's how it makes it a lot more flexible. But these one-off governments, joint powers, are made up. We're seeing this be used a lot of already established governments. All the city councils and the county will all create a joint powers. Well, you, the citizen, if you don't like what they're doing, good luck with that. There's so many hands in that pie. You don't vote for all those other city council people that are making decisions that affect you. You don't have a vote there. So it takes the decision-making process way further away from the people. And it's kind of scary when these bodies can tax and regulate you, because they can cripple you. You know,
they're going to leave you with the debt. They can assume debt behind this joint powers, so they're not the guy doing it. They can assume debt that the rest of everybody else is going to be responsible for. And we don't have any action against EPC or Shannon San Juan because they decided to form their groups, like Debbie said. Their violation is the fact that they're created as an irrigation district that can be 2 miles from each other, but you're supposed to have a system of works, a way to move water, which they don't, and you're supposed to have a majority of land over the common source, which is the basin, which they don't. So they should have been allowed to petition to be those types of water districts. One of the members on the Shannon San Juan worked for the DWR as an attorney for 5 years. They have different connections and different players. It's the same players from 10 years ago. It's the same players from 2005 on a thing we had called the prior agreement. And so they want to claim, well, this isn't exactly like that other deal. It is exactly like that other deal.
So you're saying exactly 10 years ago, what the thing that got shot down, like nucleafied, is the exact same they're trying to do now.
With a little different process.
With a little different verbiage and a little different.
And I'm going to say on this Joint Powers Authority, there's good and bad to everything. So people would say, well, why does that even exist, to have a joint powers and bring individual governments into one bundle? Well, the upside of it was supposed to be, hey, I'm just hypothetically, but say a Tascadero, maybe when they were smaller in Templeton, they said, individually, it's really hard for us to tax our folks within our city limits and pay for a fire department, but we're right next door to each other. This is a hypothetical.
Sure.
We're right next door to each other. Let's create a joint powers, a new government, basically, right? Pluck it right out of a brand new government, and we'll share the costs and share the benefits, and economy of scale, it's going to be better. Sounds good, and it's been used in many cases, but it can also, be abused when it's being used for something. So the downside then is the people that own property within this basin would say, well, how's that going to help me? I'm doing just fine. I'm paying my electric bill on my well, and I don't need this. I don't want this. And why do I want to subject myself to yet another governmental entity, and one that's a little bit removed? We're seeing this in a lot of places, and I won't get off track, but a lot of people it is not a benefit to them. But with the last election, if we hadn't have gotten those changes made, they wouldn't have even had a fair vote. In this case, it's going to be a weird deal too, a 218, where you have to protest and you're never really going to see a ballot or know there's an election. I mean, it's just
You have to say no. If you don't say no, you're saying yes.
You're automatically yes if you don't do anything.
And when you even know, if you're not really paying attention,
That's every political dream right there. Hey, you're already a yes unless you say no.
Yeah.
Right?
And I want to say one other thing that I hope people remember. Government has become very, very expensive. Government, when you think about it, oftentimes is almost a middleman, so it adds cost. It's expensive to operate. You're paying salaries, you're paying benefits, you're paying pensions, and you can run up, as Greg was saying, the fact that joint powers could put people into debt. I mean, as a government,
Sure.
not people individually. But the only way you get out of that is raising taxes. And then, over the course of my my time, they can. I've seen these little governments. Integrated Waste Management Authority. Again, they created something that brought everybody together, all the individual cities and county, to do a specific thing, manage the garbage and the mandates on that. But then they started creating ordinances.
The bag deal, the styrofoam deal.
They started creating things that with criminal. If you violated it, you could be charged criminally or fined money, and you're thinking, who are these people? It's unless there's a really good reason. I'm not going to say never create these special one-off governments, but I'd say think long and hard, because it could be the dog that turns around and bites you really hard. So I don't think in this case that the majority of the people are going to benefit from this, even if this is a hypothetical too, because I don't know what these people that are promoting this really want to do or intend to do. But even if they taxed everybody and got enough money to build infrastructure, dams or pipes or this or that, they're doing that on the premise that we're in a crisis. We're not. We live over one of the largest aquifers in the United States of America. We're going to have droughts. When Mother Nature lowers our water table, we're going to have to deal with that. But is it worth it to? I mean, are you going to benefit from pipes in a dam? I doubt that's true. So it's a matter just like Cadillac Desert, just like a smaller farm community like Owens Valley losing everything to Los Angeles. The President Theodore Roosevelt looked at this from far away in Washington and said, well, Los Angeles is growing so fast, it's one of the largest cities in our country. It's more important that we take the water there and give it to them and take it away from this farming community in the north. Okay? But I always said, okay, well, I didn't get elected to figure out who all everywhere else needs what. I got elected to do what was right for the people in my district. And this isn't a betterment for them. In fact, it could open up such a can of worms. It could be very detrimental.
You look at. We have a kind of a similar thing that happened 76 years ago. So the Salinas Reservoir was built to get water to Camp San Luis that was going to be built during World War II, and San Luis didn't have no water. They came to North County, got on the Salinas River, built Margarita Lake, the Salinas Reservoir. And then when they didn't, then they decided we're not going to make Camp San Luis as big. And I don't know which one, Hunter Lickett or Camp Roberts, that became more the thing. But San Luis jumped on the piggyback of the Army Corps and says, hey, can we use some of that water since you're not going to use some? And so the dam was never completed. It's supposed to be completed to 45,000 acre feet. It's 23,000 acre feet. And they've been taking that water to South County from North County's watershed for 76 years. Okay,
Otherwise,
that
that would be
watershed,
recharging here.
yeah, that watershed is what recharges the Paso Basin. So why aren't they paying something for quote unquote management? And these districts, irrigation districts, are basically from surface water, not from pumped groundwater. So everybody's got to ask themselves, what is the benefit? Those guys have a proposed budget for 5 years of $22 million. So a little over $4 million a year for 5 years. The first $1 million is just to pay for the agency, the general manager, the an attorney, some staff people. Then they're going to need pensions, salaries, equipment, vehicles, a building. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. Okay, how does all of that benefit any landowner on his own private well? What are they managing? I don't need them to manage my groundwater. The California Constitution gives me the beneficial right of what I need for my groundwater. Doesn't give me a depth on my well, but everybody that has a private well got a permit, put in a well, the well was inspected, they most likely built a house or they grew something on their land or they did something. And as long as they're not using more than their correlative right, their fair share of what's available, then they're not doing anything wrong. What these guys are doing now and what happened with the emergency ordinance and why the other thing, that's what formed the quiet title lawsuit and the stuff. They were trying to say, well, we're going to decide who gets what equity, not equality. We're going to decide that these guys should have more than what's their fair share, and you people just need to be quiet and pay for it. I don't need to pay for infrastructure for some big vineyard operations that are using grapes as a cover crop. So that, and I have documents right here, I brought them, that show their whole idea is to use farming as a cover crop so they can sell the water at a later date for more value. Even if it doesn't transfer like physically for certain parts, it's monetarily, it's worth a lot because a contractor somewhere else in a different area can say, hey, I'd like to buy so many water credits from you because I'm doing a subdivision down here. And then that water is set aside and can't be used, and they're going to get paid so much money for it. Oh yeah, you know, we'll take out 100 acres of this and we'll say that we're selling you that credit. It's kind of like this carbon credit thing and stuff. So all the players are trying to make money and are invested. Why do we have a company that's a pension fund company from Montreal, Canada, who bought into Harvard's investment out in Shandon for $98 million? They didn't come here to grow grapes and sell wine. They came here for the investment of the water in the future. Otherwise, how are they going to pay their pension? How are they going to pay for their pensions? And now we have an organization that's not even in the United States invested over here. And so we need the citizens that live over the basin. I live in the watershed. This little rule that they're doing doesn't physically affect me, doesn't affect Debbie. We care about the constituents and our neighbors and our friends that are in this situation. And why do they feel that these 160 or whatever people that are the EPC, and half of them don't live here, and the 62 that are in the Shannon San Juan, and half of them don't live here, that couple hundred people should dictate what happens over 436,000 acres and everybody else? Paso Robles is a whole different deal. They're the elephant in the room. Everything, when they say, well, we're 12,000 acre feet overdrawn, is what their model says. Well, we have 6 reports that show their model is incorrect by 30,000 acres. And they paid for those studies. The county did. The counties have spent millions of dollars, and most of it's been grant money from the state. So we know what the situations are. That doesn't mean we don't have a shallow well water issue because of what came around areas that people had shallow wells. But if Paso Robles were to use the rest of their nacimiento water, they waste over 5,000 acre feet a year they don't use. Why don't they use it? Well, it costs them more, way more than to pump from the ground. But if they use that 5,000 and then cleaned it and recharged that 5,000, There's a 10,000 acre foot swing right there. And you say we're 12? All right, why don't you cover all the ag ponds and save another 1,000 to 2,000 from evaporation? Why don't you do stormwater capture and slow up the rainwater like we're allowed to do to make the recharge take more effect? Why don't you save a little more water that flows into Salinas and let the natural recharge happen instead of sending our water somewhere else? There's so many simple things that can be done without another agency, but that solves the problem. If you solve the problem, you don't need these clowns trying to take over.
But what do they so they say if something's not done here locally, California will step in and do it for us.
If I could say something to that, that was, driving me crazy back then. So think about it in this way. So we're a county and we're in a drought. And yes, depending on where you are, your well might not be deep enough during a drought. Think about that under the ground. Water's lowering. Mother Nature's doing that. It'll be back when it rains. And now, right now, after 23, we have our water table back up to the top almost, right? That's just the thing. But when these folks came up and said the state's going to come and get us, and again, I keep going back to that Cadillac Desert story because it was all this. It was politics tying in. So Sacramento, all through the drought, they're deciding we need new laws. And truthfully, honestly, many places in the agriculture places in the valley were being overpumped. They were being overpumped and overused, just overused. And so you saw the ground level or the subsidence, meaning your ground's caving in underneath. The water's been taken out. Too much water's been taken out. We didn't have that, of course, but. The Sigma laws were designed to go through the state of California and make sure water basins like ours were being managed correctly. And so John Pashang and I, who represent the basin, he the northern half, me the southern half, we were very active for 10 years. And we worked through all these meetings and government agency stuff, and we came up, by law, we came up with a groundwater management plan that was accepted by the state of California. So that was all good. All that the state's going to come and get you went away. We had our plan approved by the state. And you know what the plan said? And this was me looking at all these years thinking, you know what we need to do? We need to understand we have this much water to use. And we're not going to start taxing everybody and saying impossible things to fix it. We're going to stop pumping beyond the safe yield. We have this much. This is all there is. We'll divvy it up fairly, and that's it. We're not going to go into all this other nonsense because you won't be able to really fix it. And in the back of my mind, I'm watching these schemes. This is about moving our water, having storage in our county, and then moving underground water to other places for money. But again, that hasn't happened, so what people say, we would never do that. Maybe they wouldn't, but I'm just saying that's a possibility of profiting from the water. So anyway, what was funny is the people that had most recently come into the county, they were creating these humongous water systems, and if anyone was overpumping, it was them, while they were telling the folks at all the town halls, we're in a crisis. Oh my God, if you don't just get your checkbook out and start, if we don't create this new government. It was like the fox in the hen house telling you were in a crisis while they were pumping. So what we did and what we got approved was, okay, no more of that. You can pump. I'm a private property rights person. You can pump your share, but not beyond. And everybody, we're going to keep it real. As much as the basin will yield, that's how much we'll be able to farm and pump in our basin. End of story.
But that's common sense.
As soon as that happened, John and I were taken off. This is very unusual. We were taken off after 10 years and all the work and success. I mean, we won the game, right? We had an approved plan approved by the state of California. So the state wasn't coming to get us. All we had to do was make sure that plan was adhered to. As soon as that happened, we were taken off. Who does that? And a supervisor that none of you voted for decided to step in, and everything changed. Wow. And so that's the story of that.
And what she's talking about is I mean, it's 100% accurate. These guys can't get away from what they did or the facts. This is what drives them crazy, and this is why they had to hire a marketing company to try to clean up their mess. There's no benefit to having them manage the basin. Have they helped with the shallow wells that they I'm not saying they created the shallow well. They created the problem by, you got everybody around a certain area all pumping at the same time from June to October. And you can see the interference at that time, and then it comes back. And so and when you divvy up things equally, you're adjudicating the basin. They've been fighting ever since 2000. Well, actually, this is why the prior agreement happened in 2005. And what that was they didn't want, what happened down in Santa Maria is they had a court adjudication that gave the water rights to the priority right holders and other things and divided up equally. They didn't want it to be equal. And they don't understand. Anybody that lives over the land is an overlier and has the priority right. Like I like to say is, we're the ones driving the car. All the other towns, CSTs, and everything, they're appropriators. They get to use what's called surplus. So if there's 100,000 acre feet available and the overliers are using 90, that means there's 10,000 in surplus. Anybody else can use the 10,000 in surplus, but you can't go over the 100. Okay? And every year it's going to vary a little bit. Okay, so if the overliers are using the whole 100 or whatever the limit is, there's no surplus. If there's no surplus, they're supposed to use their other sources. And like in the case of, I don't care if it's state water. So Paso Robles doesn't use their nacimiento water because of the lawsuit that they're defended in, that they've lost 5 trials, because that costs $2,500 an acre foot to pump it, clean it, put it in the pipes. Pumping the water from the ground and doing what you need to do that, $300 an acre foot. County built $1 million turnout in Shandon. They haven't used it in the 8 years they've had it. Very little on the first 3 years. So it's for 100 acre feet of state water they have available. When that water comes treated off the top of 46 from Paloma Pass, that when it gets to Shannon, it's $2,500 an acre foot. So for that $100, or for that 100 acre feet that they need, they could spend $250,000 because they're the water district in Shannon, or they can pump from the ground and it costs them $30,000. Okay, now we're looking at their wallet instead of, is that best management practices? You're telling other people they can't pump from the ground without paying. You have other sources and you're not using them. And then that water would be recharged when it ran through their systems also. So what we have is a management problem, and the guys that want to be in charge of the management are only in charge of their own pocketbooks and how they can make money and how they can be in charge and who they're taking their orders from. Everybody that sits on these water boards or water districts, most of them are paid mouthpieces. They don't own anything over the basin. Why should a guy be on the Shannon San Juan Water District or the EPC Water District that doesn't own or do his own irrigation or anything over the basin, but some other guy does and appointed him to there and he doesn't even live here? All these guys, I'm not sure for Mayor Hammond, John Hammond, if he's actually, his home is over the basin, it's in Paso Robles, and they get pumped water. But the other 3 people, none of them live in this area. Of course, Bruce Gibson lives in Cayucas. Matt Turrentine lives in South County in San Luis. I don't know where the other guy lives. Go ahead, Debbie.
Oh, I was just going to say one thing that I think it's important for people to know, because when all of these discussions are happening, and it's often pointed to, well, we have wells going dry and that sort of thing. And I'm always been a fan of limited government, right? Government is where we pool our money to buy necessities, like build a road, things that we couldn't do as individuals, but we can do collectively. Limited government. But, and part of that, where government does make a difference to the good, is the land use authority that our county supervisors have, is the permitting of buildings or building towns or people, being able to build things. California Valley is my big example in our county that I like to share, because before we really had that land use authority and you could go buy anything anywhere and do whatever you wanted, we had someone subdivide a ranch into 7,000 2-acre plots and sell them for housing sites with no accessible water. So there's an example. If you go out to California Valley,
And he got approved to do that?
it was pre-approval years.
Oh.
Really, you could
It was the
just
Carissa
go.
Plains.
Okay, yeah, you could do whatever
and
you
you
want.
could go, yeah, because so this would have been in the late '60s.
Oh, okay, that
right?
far back.
And so there's an example now. All these many years later, people buy those lots, and this happened all over the country. The kind of the speculators, you could buy a acreage in Nevada and had no access to water. And by that I mean, if you have the $1 million to stick your straw to way down, you're going to find water eventually, but most people don't have that. So if just reasonably putting in a well, you just don't have, you can't access the water. It's too, maybe you're underneath, there's rock formations or whatever's causing the problem, but not every piece of property in this basin can access water. And so when they say, well, wells went dry, well, they couldn't access the water, anyway, unless you're in a really wet year. And I even go back to the years in the early 70s. There were ranches subdivided along Park Hill Road, which is very close to where I live, and sold for houses or small acreages. And the water there was not accessible either. And people that bought property in Park Hill knew that. It was less expensive. And for, when I was a young adult, lots of people I knew and they planned on trucking in water to their property in dry years because they knew, what they had just didn't have accessible water. But now, very often, and even in our plans that we had to do for the government to satisfy the state, we had to talk about what we were all going to do for these wells that went dry. And I'm just saying that, thank goodness for land use planning now, because you wouldn't have had those things happen. You can't get a permit to build a house if you can't prove there's accessible water. But we have a lot of things that were built pre that criteria.
Hold on, Greg. Let me ask Debbie. Debbie, so let me ask you a question. Is there anything that, like, as far as what they're wanting to do or their plans that you know of the plan to do this, that you go, I can see that that's a good reason. You know what I'm saying? Is there anything in?
Oh, are you talking about the folks that have created the water districts that are trying to come in and govern over everyone?
Yes.
No, I think the downside for the average citizen, for the average property owner in this North County lives over the basin, I think that the downside is going to outweigh the good side. If we stuck to the plan that got approved and we were telling the big guys with the big ginormous water systems, you guys can't just pump as much as you want and keep building these reservoirs and pumping.
But that makes sense. I mean,
you can't do that.
Right.
You two are going to follow the law that we all have to follow, and we're going to stay within the safe yield of the basin. So if you want to farm all this stuff that you got planted, you're going to have to go somewhere else and do it. We're not going to let you overpump our basin. And then most of the 5,000 individual property owners, big and small, will be better off for that. And that's all I've always looked at is what is the best. The other kind of thing that they use, and it makes sense to people, and that's why I'm trying to kind of bring up the things that I've seen over the years that people will say, first they'll fall for we're in a crisis and we have to. I always felt so bad. People would be like conserving their water so much, going to great lengths to use such very little water, and they were really being played on all that, right? Well, I mean, we all experience this while you're trying to conserve water because we're being told that there's not enough, and then you're seeing overhead sprinklers going,
right?
Right? That annoys people. But and also, I would hear people say, what the heck? The city of Paso or the city of, they're building hotels. I do want to say this to folks so they know it. Generally speaking, we've come so far with our technology that homes, hotels, buildings use very, very little water. And so you have your low flush toilets and your, all your appliances. We've come to be to the point where we use very little water. So yes, if you're being told, we're in a crisis, maybe again it's annoying to see a hotel built, but compared to and I'm a property rights agriculturist, but compared, that hotel is nothing compared to one vineyard that you see being watered. We know that what those plants need to be able to stay alive and grow and produce. So it really is a matter of, it's land use, right? If there's not enough water to grow and plant irrigated crops there, what do we used to do with it? We used to run grazing animals or something. I mean, you could still be productive with your land, but if it doesn't have enough water to support, then you need to recognize that and be good stewards and cut it off. In other words, I don't want to see all the people paying for pipes and create and trying to pay for the damage and fix the damage that's being done by these billionaires that are coming in on investment. It's my constituents. I don't want to see that happen. I think we should think long and hard before creating new layers of government, especially the ones that are hard to have a direct contact with.
But you know what I think what you're saying right there, Debbie, is nobody knows. I mean, given the trash example, on the surface makes sense, but then down the road,
it gets sold off its good points, right?
Yeah.
But is that what we really want to do? Allow some folks to overpump and possibly later, when they have the infrastructure that would be built off taxpayers' backs, move and sell our water? Do we really want people to overpump and then we're all going to chip in to pay to fix it? That's basically what it boils down to. No, stop it right now. Don't overpump, and we can all live happily ever after.
Because nobody's going to come in and fix your pumps. Nobody's going to come in and help to pay for it if you need to go deeper, right?
That's the other part, is that when you look at, Paso is the water district of their community in their area. San Miguel's the water district of their area. The two, what I call fake water districts, they had the people who wanted to join their groups, even though they don't deliver water, but they have their groups. Everybody else that lives over the basin in the county is not their water district. The county does not have water authority on their beneficial use. Each of those people is their own water district. They paid for their well, they paid for their electricity, they paid for their infrastructure, and they pay for all the repairs. All the operation and maintenance is done by that private property owner. So what benefit is this management that they're claiming going to do for those people? Now, the management for these other agencies that are actually providing a service, that's a different deal. So if they said, well, if you want to join this, we'll pay you for your well and we'll maintain it for the rest of the time, and if it needs to be fixed, well, there's 8,000 wells at $100,000 a piece. I still wouldn't sell my well to them for $100,000, but then on top of that, all the maintenance and anything else that goes on with it. And your land was valued when you purchased it for any given reason. Was it because it looked beautiful and it had a lot of oak trees? Was it next to a creek? Does it have class 1 soils with 1,000 gallon a minute well? Or is it more to the east with no trees and you get 5 gallons a minute out of a well? And that's how it was priced. So if you're going to treat every one of those issues as equal, then shouldn't all the property taxes be equal? Shouldn't every property only be a certain amount because we're treating everything equal? Well, they're not equal. Some people, like Debbie was saying, have access to better water or water that's not as deep. The county allowed what was called these little ag subdivisions. So they allowed these farmers and or ranchers to do some development in their areas, and they were called ag clusters. And then what happened was they let them get away with shallow wells in those areas, and then later on, 20 years down the road, irrigated ag moves in around them with really deep straws. And it's the irrigated ag that created, if they would have never had shallow wells, you might not have ever heard about it. Like in the Jardine area, or between airport and as you're going from the airport and around there, pretty flat area. They're actually over the best part of the basin, but you got to be 800 feet deep. The main water is from 600 to 1200. 800, you're in the sweet spot. Okay, but so for Jardine, I think there's 500 homes or something, and they're from 1 acre to 5 acre type properties. If they would have had a mutual water company that they were all involved in, and they would have put in a few tanks and 2 or 3 really good wells, you'd have never heard from them. They'd never had a problem. But they have dirt streets. They let them subdivide it a certain way. There's 4 main areas that have issues. They're one of them. El Pomar area is one of them. El Pomar didn't have a problem until the Hardin Ranch was taken over and planted with 800 acres of grapes. And you have 4 ag ponds that hold 200 acre feet of water that are constantly being filled and constantly being, so then all the shallow wells around them all had to be replaced. You can go to the county's environmental, where you get your permit for your well, and from 2014 to the present, they can tell you exactly, it's between 350 to 400 domestic wells that have been replaced, though the people that could afford it. There's probably a few more out there that they can't afford it yet, or they might have to at a different date. And they were all around 250 foot deep, maybe 300 max. And they all had to go down to 700 or 800 foot deep. So they didn't have those issues until later on. And every area is different. The Creston area that I'm in, you can go 400 feet and get 1,000 gallons a minute. We're at the most southern end of North County, but we're at the beginning of the watershed. I'm in the watershed that provides water to that part of the basin. It has a very good watershed area from all sides that bring water into that part of the basin. And then as the basin goes north, it's a bunch of series of underground, I'll just call them bathtubs. And when ours overflows, it flows into the next one, and so on and so forth. The Wero River starts at my place, one fork of it, and runs all the way to the Salinas River past San Miguel, behind the water park and stuff. So when the water's flowing, and for 23 and 24, we had outstanding water. And so when you see that water moving, and you want it to be from bank to bank, because that whole alluvial area is your sponge, and that's what's recharging. But when it's going, that means that area's already been filled up and is recharged, and it's moving down and recharging as it's leaving. So stormwater capture says, hey, slow that up a little bit, give it time, spread it out from bank to bank. Don't let it just be in the center of the thing. And you're helping the natural thing take place. These guys want to do water banking and all this terminology, and Debbie can tell you that all the terminology, banking, recharge, GSP, GSAs, so that's what gets everybody all confused. Water banking means you're taking over a space, you're putting water in it that now belongs to you, and you're going to use it for a different purpose at a different date. Recharge means you're putting back what you took. It's like your savings and checking account. You make money, you put it in the savings. When you need it, you put it in your checking. There's going to be some times where you're going to take more out of your savings to pay for stuff, and there's going to be other years where you're not going to have to take out hardly any of it. And that's why when you look at a basin, you can't look at one particular year. You got to look over a period of time. In the court process that I'm involved in with the quiet title, I mean, they look at a 40-year period. Okay, in that period, we have 150 years of rain totals. So if you look at our basin and everything being equal, Paso Robles is 14.1 inches. My area is 24 inches. Every area is slightly different. But I just say, let's just call it all 12, because 12 inches over an acre is 1 acre foot of water. So if you say it's all 12 in a normal year, 12 inches over the basin is 436,000 acre feet of water. And we use 80. You can't tell me we can't get enough recharge in a bad year where you're only getting 6 inches. You're still getting 200 20,000 acre feet of water, and we use 80. Even in a bad year, we should be able to get recharged. So, but bad years are gonna, is when you're gonna take more out because you're not getting the same rainfall, so you're gonna irrigate more, or you're gonna use more for other reasons. And then during the wet years, you wanna recharge more, and you're gonna use less on those things because you're getting more precipitation and better deal. So being a good steward of the land, taking care of the watershed, adjusting your things where you're making a benefit. There's no reason to grow any crop if, even in the state of California, and I hate picking on wine grapes. I got nothing against wine grapes. I got nothing against wine. Alfalfa uses more, but I need that too to feed cattle sometimes. But if you're gonna leave 10% of your crop hanging on the plant and you're just irrigating to drop stuff, what benefit is that? And if you can't sell the product because we don't have the desire as much anymore as other crops, I would think you'd want to change to do something that would bring more money. When I don't have enough hay, Debbie will tell you, she's in the cattle business too. You don't have enough feed, you got to get rid of some of your cattle unless you want to spend a lot of money to try to feed them to keep them. And you might do that for a short time, but you're not going to do that for a long time because it don't pencil out. So when times are good again, maybe you're gonna keep back some of your calves, some of your heifers or whatever, and increase your herd again, because everything goes in cycles. It's not 100% flat line all the time. Otherwise, we'd never have to make these kind of decisions or have these problems.
Right.
Another important thing for people to know when we talk about the water banking, and people even, well, what is that? And I think a lot of the trouble in California started by well-meaning government agencies, or government will solve the problem. California has the potential to grow a lot of crops and is one of the bread baskets of the world. But originally, when that was recognized, you're thinking, including Los Angeles and Southern California, there's just not enough water. We could do it if we could figure out how to get water down there. And originally it was the snowy mountain pack every year that's melting and running into the ocean, right? And so not so long ago, a federal water project was developed and a state water project developed. And this is where I see one of the key problems that California is having now as a result of the government not really fulfilling its promise. The state of California decides it's going to create a water project, and this was the Pat Brown governor years. And they started to do that with tax dollars, but the problem is they contracted out all that water. Whole towns were built depending on this scheme of moving water from the north to the south, and they and also agriculture all through the valley. Hey, if you'll send us the water, we'll farm it. The state of California only half finished the project. So for all these decades, like I say, people invested and started farming and grew towns, and the water didn't come the way it should. Delivered water didn't come. So what did they do? They started drilling into the ground to keep moving or keep their town alive or keep their farm alive. And this has caught up with us. It's so severe, the environmental damage, that it subsides the ground. As far as I know, that's an irreparable damage to the environment, where you're just caving in, and the ground is lowering because it's that empty space. But what worries me about what I see happening here, and again, now I'm speculating, but if it's true that this is water investment, and people say, I don't understand what you're talking about with water investment. We live over one of the largest aquifers, and when either Mother Nature gives us a drought, the water table lowers, or we can overpump it and we can lower it as well. But folks that have rights to our state water, there is some state water delivered in canals, and our county receives some, and we have the infrastructure to bring it here. You buy your 100 acre feet of water that you have rights, or that you've contracted with the state, and you inject it into the ground. That's what we call a water bank. If you inject bought-in water, something that you bought, you contracted with the state so you could water your olive trees, but you can also, if you're not going to use it watering, you can inject it into the ground, And then that space that either nature or overpumping has created under our ground, in our groundwater, that water becomes privatized because whoever injected it, bought it and injected it, owns it. They can take it out whenever they want to. So if I decide, okay, I'm not going to water my grapes this year, I'm going to inject all my rights, my water off the state water system into the ground. I buy it for $100 an acre foot, but boy, in the next drought, that golf course in Palm Springs will pay me $3,000 an acre foot to keep their golf course going. That is a business plan. What do you need to make that business, to fulfill that business plan? You would need the infrastructure. And so very often I think a lot of this infrastructure, building the pipes and the systems, or a water bank. And I thought, this is another little red flag. When I first got elected, I was sworn in January of 2013. Right on the shelf at the county was a water banking feasibility study that we paid a lot of money to have. And I thought, what is a water bank? I didn't even know that back then. Water banking feasibility study. Why do we need that? Why do we need to do that study? Why do we have that on our shelf? I still don't know the answer to that.
So the guy who did
Wow.
that, the guy who pushed that, is the same guy that's one of the guys that started the San Juan Water District. He's been on the Water Resources Advisory Committee for close to 30 years. I did that for Debbie for 8 years, and I'm doing it for the Cattlemen's Association now. But his plan, because he was part of this thing called, he knew about it because he worked for the DWR, so he was part of this Monterey Amendments that was these private meetings in Monterey where this is how Stuart Resnick took over the Kern Water Bank.
The water bank was part of our state system. It was when the state was deciding, maybe instead of above ground reservoirs, we'll do under the ground storage. But then it was put into private hands in a mysterious way that no one ever explained to date.
And this is how paper water got generated because of the state not fulfilling their obligations. They sold 4.23 million acre feet of water and only have storage for half of that. So when they say, well, you still have the water even though we don't deliver it. The county of San Luis Obispo pays for 25,000 acre feet of state water project water.
We all pay for that on your property tax. All of you listening, on your property tax, you're billed every year for state water that you will never ever.
Even though you're not in a situation to get it. Now, the county has the 25. They asked who would like to be in part of this deal. South County, most of the 10 subcontractors are in South County. So they said, we want to be in. Well, they pay for 10, hoping to get 5. This year right now is 40% delivery. Even though we got plenty of water, it doesn't always come south of the Delta because of other reasons. So if they only get 40% of their 10, that's 4,000, and they need 5,000. So where do they get the other 1,000? Well, there's an unsubscribed portion that they've been taking from, but now that got stopped, and they have to buy it, or they have to have carryover from the previous year because they might have got 60% or 70%. So, a couple years ago they got 100%. So they have some carryover that they can backfill because the state can't provide the water. When the state can't provide the water, there's 29 state contractors. The Metropolitan Water District is the largest. We're like number 24 out of the 29. So when the state can't deliver the water is when these guys who want a water bank would say, hey, we got some extra water, we'll sell you. It doesn't mean that the water table's up, because at the time that they're doing it, the water table could be down. So when they take their portion out, even though it's down, they're making the basin worse. Nobody needs it when it's wet. They need it when it's dry.
And that's where people will hear the privatization of the groundwater. That's what that means, is people that are going to use this as a investment, privatizing the groundwater. But I'm worried that when that happens, I think most people will agree groundwater is a natural resource that should be shared by everyone, and so forth and so on, and a constitutional right. Like Greg said, that if you own property, that's supposed to be your right to use the water under your ground. But if it's under the ground, it's moving. The water's moving too. So someone has the ability to delete the water that's under your ground should this really take off and go.
And they don't know where they're putting the water, where it's going. We had an earthquake in 2003. I guarantee you some people's wells changed from what they used to be.
Springs dried up and springs appeared.
In Paso Robles,
Yeah.
sulfur water, the parking lot there in front of the
Right.
city council, where there was a big hole there, and they had to plumb that to the river because they couldn't stop it.
Another important thing for people to think about, and this goes to my main point, which is, government is not going to be the solution to this problem, and creating more agencies is going to be expensive, and it's often, sends us down a road that's even more detrimental. But Greg mentioned that the County Board of Supervisors had land use authority, not water, land use authority, and that's true. But it's reaching into the water world in that, and we saw it, the supervisors, it's a crisis, we're in a drought, it's a crisis. And while I was on the board, they created they called it originally the 1-to-1 offset, and I tried to fix it and called a planting ordinance to fix it a little bit. But this just shows people how you have to be careful. Once you go down the road with government, most often you can't back out.
That was
back
promised.
up.
That was promised to be a 2-year timeout, never to be permanent, with emergency ordinance, and that's what created the quiet title action that we've been in for 11 years. That we've won everything, but you have to play this game. Court isn't fast, and why did they want to penalize their own constituents over something like they fallowed and did different things on their own, and then Debbie can tell you, then those people that did the right stuff were the ones that were penalized.
It was very unfair, but as a land use, so let's just say we're all just looking at our county on a map and trying to decide, yeah, we want agriculture to thrive in our county, right? But, then obviously we're not going to tell people to plant and irrigate in the desert. That's what land use is, right? Where you're going to put your homes, where you're going to put and it usually follows the resources. So the government, in trying to solve a problem, I think is creating a worse one, in that when you set up a system, and it's still in place today, and a lot of people don't even know this, you aren't allowed on the land use side. The county is saying they can't tell you can't use the water, but they can tell you can't plant irrigated crops that use water, right? So it's very expensive for them to enforce this, and I don't even think they can do a very good job because their eyes can't be everywhere. So that's silly too. But what they've done is create a situation with their 1-to-1 offset. If you decide, I don't want to grow I don't want to irrigate anything, so I'll sell my rights to irrigate because I'm in a high, good watering area. I'm going to sell it to somebody else, and all this trading of credits. You could theoretically end up with irrigation going on in all the wrong places that aren't naturally suited, and the places that are suited for irrigation have sold all their water rights off their land. So it's just like going into quicksand and getting deeper and deeper. And a lot of these government theories, or we're going to do it this way, and that was supposed to be a way to stop so much water use. But I think the unintended consequence could be that the land in our county suitable for irrigation won't be able to be irrigated, and vice versa. The land that shouldn't be irrigated will be the only place that has the rights to
But that's what I told you about the transferring. You're not supposed to transfer your use. So let's say you just bought a piece of property that some guy had for a while, and you're all happy, and then you find out after you buy it, well, you can't use that land for what you thought, because that water, he sold those water credits. And the lending company didn't even know that he devalued that property by somehow transferring his water use from that property somewhere else, and nobody knows about it. Would your lender like that? Your lender loaned on something to whoever purchased it on the value based on certain things. It's kind of like, well, we didn't know that you sold the kitchen in the house, and the house isn't worth as much anymore, or it doesn't have this, or it doesn't have this.
A real estate nightmare if you're a realtor.
Right.
To actually even know what you're supposed to,
Yeah, no, this is it sounds like a Taylor Sheridan, TV show.
Oh, yeah.
Terrible. It's terrible.
But
Yellowstone too.
yeah, there you go. Yeah, California
Stone.
version.
and so even well-meaning and sometimes not well-meaning, but things go haywire and people are stuck with it, and it's hard to reverse. So I hope there were a couple things. If people are like me, sometimes I'll listen to something like this and then I'll want to go look about it for myself. But I already shared, Cadillac Desert, especially the beginning of the book. Mark Reisner is a good way to look at a little history that it seems to be replaying. But there's also, people don't want to take the time with the reading a book. There's a great documentary that was done in the midst of all this that I used to refer to people, and it's called, it was a National Geographic, I think it was National Geographic.
Yeah, it was National Geographic.
Water and Power, a California Heist. Water and Power, a California Heist. And you can find it, where you buy documentaries to watch. But it starts with this sort of thing happening in the valley and how, it's kind of gone awry with a water system that was never built out but promised. So things happened and then no water came. But it ends, or a piece of it is at the very beginning, because this documentary was done in probably right there, 2012, 13. So in the documentary, you see the folks coming over here to Paso and looking out on the newly planted vineyards for as far as I could see in the eastern part, the Shandon area, and talking about, who's doing this and what, that this could be. So it does include Paso Robles. It's a little bit dated, but nothing much has changed. In that documentary, there's a Los Angeles Times reporter that puts the documentary together, Mark Arax, like Ajax, but Arax, A-R-A-X. And he's written several books on the topic too that are very, very good. Watch this whole issue go in California, all over the state, and he's written some really good books. So you can look up easily Mark Arax, and his books, his most recent one's only a couple years old, but he's kind of documenting the good and the bad, and the struggles and the government successes and the failures of trying to wrap their arms around the water problem. And again, there's a lot of well-meaning people, and then there's a lot of profiteers, I think, that are in the mix.
Yeah, no, like I said, Greg and Debbie, this has been awesome. I'm sure you guys are going to be on again, because this doesn't sound like it's even anywhere close. I mean, it's untapped. You know what I'm saying, as far as the information, and today we have a lot of information.
Yeah, it's just it's a long story, but it's a worthwhile story.
Sure.
People, we just want people to be informed, and then with that, you get good information, you're going to make good decisions. And they have to understand this joint powers agreement is not a benefit for you. So I would hope everybody, if you have an opportunity to protest it, take that opportunity to protest it, because you're not going to benefit from these guys or this process. And we don't need this process to do what we need to do. And we talk about these different things where there's some land subsidence and different stuff. And the state created those problems for what Debbie spoke about, and in these books and stuff, from the non-delivery of the surface water. You didn't get the surface water that you used to get, so you had to pump. And so they diverted it to somewhere else to help some other area or a community or something. Just like our water's being diverted to South County, other water's not being used and being sent. We have plenty of water. We have plenty of supplemental water, but supplemental water and moving it costs money. And these guys want you to pay to move the water for them so that they can benefit from it. I'm sure I know me, I'm not invested in J. Lohr or Justin Wines, and if I was invested in them, then maybe I would be willing to have them get some extra water to keep going so my investment would grow.
There are other options in California. We live next to the Pacific Ocean, and desalination is more expensive. I mean, you're treating water, but for cities, especially coastal cities, it's an option that we've just never tapped into. And at the county, we started talking about that when I was still there. I don't know if they'll maintain that, but for people that need water in the cities, that's a great option, and that would alleviate the worries, of running out of water for some of our cities. And for agriculture, I mean, on the other side of our state, we have the snowpack of the Sierras. If we managed it, it could be a beautiful, well-oiled machine. But the struggles and the profits and the investments
environmentalists
when something's scarce, it's valuable, and so you have those and then the politics of it. But yeah, history has given us some examples of, and we just need to be smart about it and continue to advocate for common sense solutions.
Make educated decisions. All right, Greg,
Thank you.
Debbie.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming on,
Thank
and
you.
I appreciate your time, and congratulations again on retirement.
Thank you.
Sounds like you might be busier than you were before now.
Yeah.
So especially every time you come in with Greg here. So you got
Hey, what's up?
You got right. You got a long road ahead of you. Awesome,
Thank
guys.
you.
Well, thank you so much again for this information. It's valuable information for the North County. Whichever way you choose, education is key. Common sense.
Right.
Common sense is key. So thanks again, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Got it. Thank you very much.
Well, there you have it. There you have it, guys. Hey, make sure you go check out, make an educated decision on your own. Get all the information you can. You can go to pasowater.com for more information, and be a voice and vote on what you want to happen in your own land with your own well and your own water. But as always, guys, we can't do this without you and our sponsors. We want to thank Escalar Wine Travelers Hideaway, Visit Atascadero, 805 Customs, MGP Conings, North County Junk Removal, The Trailer Barn, Story Termite Pest Control, Borhone Auto Center, Kennedy Club Fitness, Airflow Filter Services, and Suprema Meat Markets. Thanks again, guys. We'll see you next time.
Hi, this is Dave Story, small game hunter with Story Termite and Pest. We're a full-service termite and pest control company. From rodents to termites, we can take care of all your pest control needs. Call today, we can tailor a pest control program that will meet your needs and budget. Contact us at 805-460-0650 or at storytermite.com. Remember, we don't have customers, we have friends.
Hi, it's Alex with Suprema Meat Market. We are a Mexican meat market with a taqueria. Come enjoy our high-quality cuts and meats. We offer choice and prime Harris Ranch beef, as well as chicken, seafood, and pork items. In the taqueria, all of our tacos come with handmade tortillas. We also offer specialty items like chilaquiles and chile rellenos. Come enjoy Taco Tuesday with Suprema. We offer our tacos at $1.99 each. Suprema Meat Market is located at 8950 Montecito Avenue in Atascadero.
Are you tired of looking at that worn-out concrete garage floor, patio, or porch? Look no further than MGP Coatings, where customer service reigns supreme. Our team goes above and beyond to ensure your satisfaction every step of the way. Before we even start coating, we meticulously repair your concrete, ensuring a flawless finish that lasts. And here's the best part. Our Pentec coatings are 4 times stronger than epoxy, so they won't chip or peel, making maintenance a breeze. Plus, they come with a limited lifetime warranty. Call us today at 805-952-5301 or check out our Facebook and Instagram and experience the MGP coating difference. Don't wait. Transform your garage, patio, porch, or driveway and become a part of the MGP coating family.
What's up, North County? This is Teresa Branch with Airflow Filter Service. We are a family-owned business right here in the North County. We have air filters, oils and lubricants, and hydraulic hoses. We provide services that include air filter cleaning, DPF cleaning, and waste oil collection. Come check us out at 1140 Ramada Drive, and we can help you with all your automotive and industrial vehicle needs.
Hi, this is Omid
and Deanna
at North County Junk Removal. We are a business known for helping our neighbors and our community.
Let us help you save money and get rid of any unwanted items.
And rest assured that our professional team adheres to global standards of safety and recycling. We are fully licensed and insured for your peace of mind.
We are locally owned and operated, and we look forward to helping you with all your junk removal needs.
Please call us at 805-769-6966.
Atascadero isn't your standard getaway. We're unique, just like you. We're growing, transforming, and figuring it out as we go. We're a town filled with innovators, artists, makers, and game changers. We're a little bit country, a little bit funky, and always authentic. We're here for your good times, your slow times, and your changing times. We're all in Atascadero. Come see for yourself. Learn more at visitatascadero.com.